Well, first up, government is expected to this week honor payments of old maturing bonds and coupons of creditors who did not participate in the domestic debt exchange program. This is what Joy Business has picked up from persons handling government's debt obligations. There's more in this report.
The payment target is in line with the Ministry of Finance plan to kickstart the process of paying all the coupons due at least a week after announcing the settlement for the domestic debt exchange program. According to the Ministry of Finance, it needed to have concluded the domestic debt exchange program to have a fair idea as to those that swapped their bonds and those that didn't before it can start any payment. Persons working on government's debt program argue that now that the process has ended, they have a better picture in terms of those that didn't participate for the payment to start. The Finance Ministry announced on February 23 that it has done the necessary settlement for the domestic debt exchange program. So, counting from that date, this Thursday is exactly a week since the program was closed. Persons that will benefit from this government move are coupon payments that were due on February 6, 14 and 20, but they didn't participate in the domestic debt exchange program. Government will come out with a statement this week before the payment, giving more clarity on the process and how the necessary accounts will be credited. About 14 billion Ghana cedis worth of old bonds didn't participate in this domestic debt exchange program.
Well, meantime, 3 bondholder groups are demanding the immediate payment of coupons and principals which matured this month. As you heard, government has assured it will honor its commitments to its domestic investors once they are due. The groups, however, say some investments matured on the 6th and 20th of February, which have not been paid. Joseph Akable has been speaking with the convener of the Pension Bondholders Forum, Dr. Edouanani Entry.
Well, this morning we've come as a coalition of individual bondholders groups made up of the Pensioners Bondholders Forum, the Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana, and the Individual Bondholders Forum. The 3 of us, the groups, have come together as a coalition and to come today, send a delegation of about 6 people to come and meet the minister or whoever is there, the ministry official of the Ministry of Finance, to find out why coupons that the minister said will be paid on the 21st, coupon and principal maturity value of bonds that has matured on the 6th, that the minister promised it will be paid on the 21st, that is after the settlement day of 20th. We haven't had any information from the ministry, and therefore we have come to find out why the payment has not been made.
In the course of your agitation over the period here, you wanted exemption. Your main fear was the non-payments. The minister assured you and granted your non-exemption. Are you surprised that this has not been paid? And what do your members, what do they make of what's happening now?
Well, everybody is worried that this payment has not been made. But we can't say that government is unable to pay until we meet the minister and then they tell us why. It may be some other reason that it's not the reason is not that they can't pay, but maybe some challenges. So until we meet the minister and we are told why the payment has not been made, then we'll see whether it is government is unable to pay or otherwise.
So in terms of going into this meeting now, what is the main demand you are going in with, and what will you consider to be a good outcome once you come out?
No, we want the payment to be effected. And so if government say, well, I'm going to effect payment today or tomorrow or the next day, we are fine. We just want to make sure that this is going to be paid. The assurance was given, 21st I will pay. And I think that if 21st you can't pay or you couldn't do it on the 21st, it was only fair that same 21st you came out with a statement explaining why you couldn't make it on the 21st and assuring your investor that, look, I'm going to do this way, wait for me 1 or 2 days or 3 days, I'm resolving these issues so that I come and pay you. But if there is no information, then investors are worried that the time for you that you promised to pay, you haven't paid, and you haven't also told anybody why you haven't been able to pay.
Joseph Akable speaking earlier with Dr. Edwanani Entry, who is a convener of the Pension Bondholders Forum. He joins us now with the latest from the Ministry of Finance. And so we are told, Joseph, this is a coalition of 3 groups. Which are the other 2 groups, and did they get a hearing?
And so there's the Pensioner Bondholders Forum, whose convener you heard a short while ago. Then there is also the Individual Bondholders Forum and the Individual Bondholders Association. And so those are the 3 groups that have nominated 2 individuals, each making the 6-man delegation that is supposed to meet the finance minister. As at 20 minutes ago, when we checked with persons who are close to this particular engagement, that meeting was yet to happen because we understand the minister was holding other meetings, and so that meeting is yet to happen. But as far as these members are concerned, they want to have that interaction and receive some information as to why the payment has not happened and when that will be done. And so they are still waiting patiently for the minister. The major challenge as at now is the fact that there wasn't an official request and grant of a meeting of a sort. And so it's not a case that the minister invited them to come for a meeting. Neither is it the case that they requested and were granted a meeting. They decided to come this time around to demand answers on their own because they hold the view that if, for whatever reason, payment could not be effected, and as we heard Dr. Ananientri explain, there should have been some formal communication to them. And once that has not come in, then it behoves on them to come here and pitch camp to demand some answers. And you recall when the exemption was granted them formally by the finance minister, they did indicate that they were going to turn into a committee to keep an eye on this particular process to see how it's going to go. So we understand that this is part of that decision that they took in tracking the process to make sure that the interests of members are protected, because the biggest concern was about government honoring its commitment, and already it has reared its ugly head.
Okay, and so we've got to point out that government assured that it was going to make the payments because they did not participate in the domestic debt exchange program. I'm just wondering, if they do not get a hearing today, what happens next? We know they're good at pitching camp. Will they continue coming to the Ministry of Finance?
I mean, from what we understand, that remains a viable option because their main reason for the protest that is staged over the period here was simply because they wanted an assurance that their investments will be exempted, and number 2, that will not be affected by way of there will not be non-payment of their coupons and principals when they are due. And so that was effectively the reason why they staged that protest over the period. And so if for whatever reason they achieved one leg of it, then the substantive leg is what is due them, and that is what they want. And so that remains a viable option. But they have opted that instead of going the route, that particular route from the initial step, they would want to first try and get some answers. And if they do not get the answers, in fact, as at 20 minutes ago when we checked with them and they have not had a meeting, what they told us was that they were going to wait till they are able to have that particular meeting because they believe that they should get some answers on what exactly is happening before they can decide on the next line of action. And so they'll be waiting till they have that particular meeting. We know that the minister is around and has been around since about 9 a.m. and they have been around since about 10 a.m.
Thank you so much, Joseph Akable himself, pitching camp at the Ministry of Finance. We'll get back to you if there are some new details. Let's bring in Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University, Williams Pepra. Anything we should be worried about?
Good afternoon, Daryl, for calling me. What has currently happened in terms of the payment of the bonds and principals which are due in finance is what we term as settlement timing risks, which is also part of the default risks. So at the moment, we were all aware that government is struggling to raise funds. This may give an indication that government does not have the funds available to pay. That is why the delay has happened, or because of the debt exchange program which just ended, government has not finished with its necessary accounting process to determine the factors or those individuals who they have to be paid. Sometimes the process will take some time in doing the sorting out very well. If the database itself is something that they have to be very sure that whoever gets paid is the rightful owner of both the bonds and the principal. Also, because two bonds are due, the accounting process is sometimes also a little bit cumbersome. So I'm sure that will be one of the reasons why causing government to have this kind of delay. The danger is that if government fails to communicate
Yeah.
to the members on time or to bondholders on time, it is going to affect the 5-year plan of repayment that other investors who bought into the debt testing program will have believed in government. In short, government is going to suffer an element of trust because when there is a counterparty risk or default, the element of trust is eroded, and then it will cause panic in the economy, and confidence in government plans will be affected. And in short, it will make the government look very bad. Already, there have been a lot of mistrust or statement issued by the finance ministries, which they have not been able to honor. So government have to be very careful not to add onto it.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say a lot of nerves would be calmed if government would just communicate. Well, I want to move on to the next topic. Last week, government announced a postponement of its visit to China to seek debt forgiveness. Your thoughts on this latest development and whether this is going to pull through this talk with China for debt cancellation?
It's a major problem. If you take the bilateral loans that government is having of about 4 billion, 1.7 billion is owed to China, which is about 42.5% of the entire bilateral debt. So China on the table is a country that Ghana has to have a very tough discussion with. Knowing China, that they don't normally go for debt relief, but probably they will reprofile their debt. That is what I am thinking that the Chinese government will go for.
And what would that entail for the education of our audience?
I mean, what you mean is that China will still demand its 1.7 billion, but will ask government that instead of paying me within 5 years, maybe pay me within 8 years, and then they will restructure the repayment process, which will reduce the interest payment. Maybe if you are very fortunate, they will not increase the interest rate charged on the loan. But sometimes they may also ask that because we are prolonging the interest payment, the rate for the interest will also go up. That is where the negotiations will have to be. Ghana, we have disappointed China with the bauxite deal, and there are other a lot of transactions that we failed them. So probably we need to go begging them to consider our situation.
All right.
The indication is that it may also affect government plan of getting the IMF deal on time, unless IMF will have to maybe overlook some of the delays coming in the negotiations and grant us our request by end of March. If not, our possible bet of the IMF deal is something going into the middle of the year.
Let's see how that goes. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Williams Peprather, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University. So government treasury bills were oversubscribed by 75% to the tune of 5.06 billion cedis. According to the auction result published by the Bank of Ghana, participation of the 91-day T-bills was almost to the tune of 3 billion cedis. Here's more in this report.
Investor interest in the short-term securities continue to soar since that market is the only source of borrowing for government for now. The amount raised by the government is the biggest in over 1 year. According to data by the Bank of Ghana, the 91-day and the 364-day bills recorded immense investor participation. Whilst the 3 months received bet of about 2.93 billion cedis, That of the one-year bill received bids worth a little over 1.46 billion cedis. All the bids were, however, accepted by the government. For the 182-day bill, all the bids of about 665 million cedis were accepted. Meanwhile, interest rates retreated further for the third week running. Whilst the yield on the 91-day T-bill went down marginally by 0.12% to 35.54%, the 6-month bill also fell by 0.16% to 35.84%. The interest rate on the 364-day bill also stood at 34.12%.
Patrick Edem-Agama is head of trading at Republic Securities. He joins us with some analysis. Good to see you, Patrick. So that was some good showing. 82% oversubscription last 2 weeks and 5% last Friday. What are the implications for the government and the investor?
Well, what it means is that there will be more pressure on governments to pay back in 3 to 6 months' time. But that is also at a time where the government is relieved of some pressure from the debt exchange. So we are confident they should be able to gather enough to pay back in these times.
All right. And the other thing has to do with the interest rates. Last 2 weeks, the interest rates on the yield curve fell marginally but remained high. I'm reading again that it fell last Friday. What is it looking like and what are the factors at play?
Well, it is quite evident now that the Treasury bill is now the only instrument that investors track. So if you look at the 364-day bill, it fell by 141.06 basis points. That was quite huge. We've not seen this in a very long time. It should tell you that investors also are beginning to sense that interest rates will fall, and hence they are pushing more money to a long-dated instrument like the 364-day bill. So we expect this to continue. The trend will continue until interest rates falls drastically.
And on the capital market, as we make the switch, we understand the high demand for shares of Total Energies and Benz Oil Palm are expected to drive the stock exchange this week. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so as we are seeing on the market, there is less interest in financial stocks, and we are seeing equities like Unilever, MTN, Total getting a lot of demand. And we expect this to continue. And when there's more demand than supply, definitely the price will go up. The exchange rebounded strongly to about 0.76% in terms of the negatives. We expect it to continue this trend until we hit the positive. So if this continues, that should see a rebound closer to what we are expecting than what we saw last year.
All right. Thank you, Patrick Edem-Agama, head of trading, Republic Securities. Enjoy the rest of the day. Well, let's take you to neighboring Nigeria, where provisional results are coming in from that country's presidential election. The poll is a tight contest between Bola Tinubu, Atiku Abubakar, and Peter Obi. It's the largest democratic exercise in Africa, which has seen many youth turn out to vote. And for sure, the economy has been a major decision factor or decisive factor for voters. I want to bring in Nigerian journalist with this day, Ugo Aliugo. Thank you so much for accepting to speak with us this afternoon. Just as we're coming on the air, we heard about a major upset in Lagos, Obi winning over there. Is there a clear winner overall yet? How is it looking like?
You mean in Lagos, right?
Yes. I mean...
Yes, so for Lagos, from the results from INEC, Peter Obi has won for Lagos State.
But how is it looking like generally?
Generally, APC is between APC and PDP. So while APC is winning majority in some states, PDP is also winning some states. But at present, INEC is still computing the results. So we are still waiting on INEC to come out with the final results because they are still getting reports from other states and then other polling units. So they are still collecting the results and then wait on INEC to collect the final results. So, but the results are trickling in minute by minute, and then INEC is trying to collect the results and get the final decisions on some of those states. Although there are cases of maybe discrepancies in results, however, we count on INEC as the official umpire in this election. to give us the final results. So, but generally, the situation is calm.
All right. Talk to us about how much the economy has played up in the lead up to the elections.
So, in the lead up to the election, there was issue of the Naira redesign, and then which had a lot of impact, and then it was an economic policy by the president and then the CBN, to see how they can redesign the Naira. Although there were insinuations from some quarters that the redesign of the Naira was mainly to address the issue of vote buying and then address the issue of politicians spending money during elections. Well, those are insinuations. Clearly, it wasn't articulated in the plan for the Naira redesign. So those are insinuations from some quarters that it was targeted at some politicians who had a lot of money to buy votes and then to see how they can circumvent the electoral process to ensure that elections were not free and fair. But the president brought it as an economic policy, and then it's not something we can say from our own end, maybe as Nigerians, that it was targeted at some politicians. That wasn't the plan of the president. It was an economic policy from my own angle, and then from the angle of the president.
All right. I mean, that was some crisis we saw there. We saw the pictures on TV, the confusion, the chaos. How has that crisis been dealt with since?
Is it regarding the Naira redesign or during the election?
The Naira redesign.
Well, initially when it came, we didn't like the Naira redesign because of the untold hardship it was. So there were people who couldn't agree to it, where the whole thing came so quick, but I think we have adjusted to the realities, and then life has moved on beyond that.
I want to talk about the current economic challenges, and it's not peculiar to just Nigeria. All over the world, we are seeing that countries are really struggling. And so what do the voters over there expect to be priority for whoever gets the nod to lead the country? What should they be fixing?
So we have the three frontliners in these elections, and then they have given out their political manifesto on their plan to rebuild the economy, and then they are talking from their own understanding, the problems they have seen in the economy, and then their own views, and then the areas they want to tackle. So it now has to do with, as an individual and as a Nigerian, who are you looking at? If you're looking at Peter Obi, if you're looking at Bola Tinubu, or you're looking at Atiku Abubakar, he has his own economic agenda on how to rebuild Nigeria, on how to position the economy. And if you are a supporter of neither of these frontliners, I think it now becomes what their manifesto is. That is your expectation in the end.
All right, and I just want to find out how long the wait is going to be. I mean, we over here in Ghana are very anxious. I can imagine what the situation there is in Nigeria in itself. How long before we get an indication of who is winning?
Obviously, everybody's waiting. Nigeria is Africa's big brother. The world is waiting with bated breath. I hope it comes out very well. We're also waiting, and then we are very hopeful that the mandate of the people, the choice of the people prevails in the end.
All right, Ugo Aliogo, business journalist with This Day in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure we'll link up pretty soon as this story progresses. And that's the marketplace, everyone. Thanks for watching. There is more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. We've got the day's latest stories from over there, so you want to check that out. Thanks for watching the marketplace.